All right, it is Wednesday, April 13th. Spring is finally here. I think it's supposed to be maybe 80 degrees today. Then it'll probably turn around and be 30 on Friday. Maybe a chance of snow, some sleet, rain, something. We had a tornado last week here in the mean streets of Tyson's, which was about 500 yards behind me. And with all that and a whole lot more, here's Riggo.
Well, thank you, Todd. You know, this is turning into, it used to be like, I think I was telling last week's show, 2 hours before the game, was always where I asked myself, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I'm starting to do that with this show now. I got no idea why, because I'm going, today they find out that I'm a phony. First of all, I think I'm turned into a dog. You ask why? Because my nose, it's always wet and cold.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I got this, we talked about this. God,
it's
it's
not
ridiculous.
good.
So, I guess, I may have to pull out a Kleenex because it's, before I left the house today, it was like every 3 minutes I had to do something with it.
You're not old school, John? You used to be old school. You always carry the little, your little hanky, your neckerchief. And
well, I seriously thought about that today because it's one of those type of deals. But instead, I wadded up about 3 or 4 Kleenex and stuck in my pocket. Because I'm thinking, well, the argument about that used to be, well, you blow your nose and then you stick it back in your pocket. So,
But think about that. A long time tradition that has gone by the wayside, right? Because now everybody, they got the pockets where, and the saying is that for showing or for blowing?
It's not for blowing, because the bottom part of it is a piece of cardboard. Seriously, they nail the cloth up on top of it, and then you just tuck it in.
A little rough on the schnoz.
Well, there wouldn't be enough to put on the schnoz. I guess it's a scraper. You scrape. I got no idea. Anyway, there's so much to do today, I think. By the way, I'm wearing a shirt that I haven't worn in I don't know how long, and the reason I bring it up is because I bought this shirt way back when I was doing Riggo on the range.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I mean, it was like I didn't, and that gets me into, which was basically, I think, probably the most fun thing I've ever done. To
About 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, 10 years ago to the year. The first episodes were done in 2012.
Wow.
Can you believe
you had some unbelievable guests. For folks that didn't know.
Yeah, Bobby Knight was one of them.
Buck Showalter. So you went fishing with Bobby Knight in Alaska.
Correct.
You
Buck
went
Showalter. We went
duck
hunting.
Oh, duck hunting in Arkansas?
Arkansas. And then
you had the
Tom
Hogs.
McGuane, we went to little upland game hunting.
Okay, so the author Tom McGuane.
Right.
McGuane. And what did he write? He wrote famous.
He wrote Missouri Breaks. He wrote the script for that, and he was telling me about that whole deal. How of course, everybody embellishes a little bit. He looked like he could be one of those guys, but I mean, where he had he almost like he had 24 hours to write the script. It was like, okay, you're a genius. I'm not. You can do that stuff. I have no clue.
Let's get to hunting, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. Load your gun. Let's go out in the field.
You went, was it deer hunting with Danny White?
Yeah, no, elk hunting.
Elk hunting in Arizona?
Danny. Yes, exactly.
Okay,
the
how
White
about
Mountains of Arizona?
You, Didier, and Russ Grimm?
And got the Did's hat on. Didier Excavation. Tri-Cities, Washington. We were hunting in the Umatilla National Forest down around, a little ways north of Troy, Oregon, which is in the far northeast corner of the state of Oregon, but we were in Washington. Literally, you'd drive in and out of Washington, literally on the line, basically.
And as much fun as you had and in your element, and then bringing in, unbelievable chefs to help prepare the meal and what you did.
Some of the big chefs downtown.
But I have to believe probably the most fun you had was one with the Hogs, and you guys went fishing, around Cape Hatteras?
Yeah, exactly. We ran out of, I can't think of the town, but yeah, it wasn't Cape Hatteras. That's down a little bit too far. What's the other place up north there where everybody runs through? There's a natural...
Wilmington?
No. There's a natural break in the, that would be further south. I can't think of actually where we ran it. Or Oregon Inlet. I'm sorry. It was Oregon Inlet.
But you, Bostic.
It was the four. The four that was there for every Super Bowl. Donnie Warren. Joe Jacoby, Russ Grimm, and Jeff Bostic. Oh, it was a fun trip in a lot of ways because, that's a group that, as you've been around Joe a lot, Donnie and then Bosco and Grimy, they're a group that don't let a lot of stuff slip by, right? So if you do something, you just step a half this way, they're on you, right? Well, it was great for me because Grimy and Bosco were sicker than dogs when we got out there.
Didn't you guys have a pool as to who was going to blow cookies and puke first?
Well, if that was the case, Grimy had to come in. And of course, if you're on a boat, they always say, "Okay, we're going to start chumming now." And Grimy was giving it all back to the ocean. But it was, and they were. I mean, you laugh because. I came close to being seasick one time down in Cabo. I was out in a little ponga, and I'd had a few too many the night before, so I was a little stung to begin with. And I put in, and back in those days, I dipped snuff, so I threw a little Copenhagen in the boiler, and it went into the boiler room, and I was like, "Oh, this could go either way." I was with Uncle Jerry, actually. He'd been with me. Yeah, it wasn't good. So, yeah, being seasick isn't any fun. But anyway, the part of that was so much fun, Todd, was actually seeing the people and doing all this stuff. But you know what I enjoyed? Because when I was a kid, I think you've heard me say this before, when I grew up, I wanted to be a truck driver. Because here I lived in this little tiny town in northeast Kansas, literally as insulated back in those days, way before the, internet and all this stuff. We were the last to know everything. By the time we got bell bottoms and was wearing them and going, "Ooh, yeah, I'm cool." In New York City, they had the tight ankle stuff, and they'd go, "Where the hell are you from?"
You're in a 20-year time warp, time delay.
At least. And so, I figured, well, if I get in a truck, I'm going to be able to drive the country and see all this stuff. You've heard me say this days before, seeing the Rocky Mountains. I'd seen the Rockies once. I mean, I didn't see them till I was like 18 years old. But anyway, the Redwood Forest and all this stuff, the Grand Canyon. So I figured that was my ticket out of town, basically. That's the only way I saw myself leaving there. And then you realize, well, a real truck driver doesn't do that, except for movers. Movers are a different story. They get off on the back roads, and that's what we did. I mean, we drive the interstate till we got out to Kansas, and then from there we went the back roads for the rest of the way. And going through those little towns and stuff, for me, it was, I don't know if the word cathartic is the right word, but it brought back, it kind of made me feel younger because it brought back a time that you thought we'd passed you by. But when you live in a city all the time, you forget, if you're from the country, what the country's like.
The bulk of the country.
It was nostalgic. Yeah,
the bulk of the country.
Exactly. And so you kind of get a little hardened to that way of life, but then all that simplicity and no traffic and all this stuff. I remember we went from the middle of Nebraska all the way out to Alliance, and we saw more freight trains going by us, eastbound, coming out of Wyoming, because that was ultimately where we were going, to Gillette, where there's all those coal mines. You won't see them now, but there was a lot of. We passed more trains passed us by far than cars or car. We didn't pass a car the whole way because there were no cars westbound, and I think in 200 miles, 4 cars were eastbound. I mean,
wow,
you're out there. The last time I remember being like that was when I was on my motorcycle back in '73, driving through Arizona and Utah, down through there, and some of the reservation land where you looked around and really you were the only one out there if you had a problem. No cell phones. I remember coming to a place one time where there was an intersection, and all was at this intersection. God knows how it got there. It was a phone booth. Phone booth.
That's like you see in a lot of music videos when they're traveling out west and there's one lonely phone booth out there there.
They do exist. You think that, oh, that's bullshit. But no, it was there, but I'm thinking, well, it's probably there so you can get in out of the rain, right? You're in the desert in the rain. Anyway, ba-da-ba-da-boom.
You'll be here all day.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to be here all week, actually. No, so the reason I bring this up about doing the Riggo on the range, because basically what we did, we'd hunt and we'd fish. And do you know, Todd, that turkey season opened this morning out in the great state of Kansas, the sunflower state? Turkey season.
April 13th.
April 13th. I just checked it out. And I knew, because I was going to talk about it, because, and I'm not sure, well, it seems like the House Committee on what do you call it, on reform, on oversight and reform. They've already started. The turkey season started early for them, and they're hunting hard out in Ashburn. They've,
I think they've located some.
they've got a flock out there, a small flock.
And one big one.
Well, that's the one everybody's looking for. It's got like the 14-inch beard on it. It's definitely the bird you want to bring home with you. But yeah, so I just thought that's another bit of.
You're on a roll.
Pretty much. But so anyway, before we get completely away from the turkey season, I have to tell you a story about when I was doing Riggo on the range, and we were in Kansas, and we get out there, and of course we'd driven pretty much straight through. My cameraman and I had, the videographer and I had gotten there, and we get to Kansas, and we're all tired.
In the Riggo.
In the Riggo, yeah.
You had a badass Winnebago that was
Riggoized.
Yeah, it was.
And that's why it was the Riggo. But anyway, so we roll into Centralia there, and my brother and I hadn't seen him in quite some time. Well, maybe a year or so. Usually I see him once a year, and that was when
Brother Bill.
Yeah, Brother Bill. At in our home where we both grew up. And so we got, we're going turkey hunting the next morning. So there was a little lodge there that the videographer stayed at up at the hill. So we just, Billy and I, by ourselves there. And he left because we were sitting there drinking a few beers. Mm-hmm. And then the videographer finally said, well, it's going to be early tomorrow morning. I'm going to get up there and get a night's sleep. And he said, okay, we'll see you in the morning. So Billy and I started drinking beer, right? And we started drinking beer. And we started drinking.
Riggo boys having get after it.
Mm-hmm. And the next thing you know, it's like a knock at the door, and we're still sitting at the kitchen table, and it's the videographer James, and it's time to go turkey hunting. We've been sitting there. We're just like, whoa. And I have to say, I was unprofessional. I've always felt bad about that. I think I was unprofessional one other time. Well, no, maybe I don't want to get down. I don't want to go. We're going to be here all day.
The turkeys were laughing at you and go, he's got nothing.
They were doing this stuff. Hey,
gobble.
Hey, I got your stuff right here, okay? Anyway, he comes in and we just said, James, we're not going to be turkey hunting this morning.
Called an audible.
So we went to bed. And, of course, don't you know, it was one of those days, because a couple days before that, it had been cold and kind of rainy and stuff. So we went out that afternoon, and I mean, both of us were just stung like you can't believe. And we're sitting in this turkey blind, and it's a tent, and it's hot. It's like 85 degrees, and with the humidity, I mean, you're just sitting there and you're just looking at your clock, going, please, don't have a turkey come by. Just let's get out of here. Yeah, it was like one of those rough days. But that was the only one I think that was more or less. Well, anyway, that was the most memorable event during Riggo on the range as far as not feeling right the day you went to work. So anyway, Todd, what do you got?
All right, we got a fascinating story here. Mm-hmm. Baseball season kicked off last week.
Could have knocked me down with a feather on that.
I know, right? I actually went to the Nats game last Friday night.
Really?
I did. Had a good time. The Nats, and what was wild? So Max Scherzer, stud, the ace, the
one that they let get away.
Yeah. So Max was pitching for the New York Mets.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring him up because I was just talking to somebody the other day. He last pitched last year for the Dodgers, right? So he was on a one-year deal, I guess, right?
Yep.
And then spun that into something even bigger and better with the Mets.
Yes, he did, which leads us to this particular stat.
Where Buck Showalter now has
there you go, your boy, your hunting buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
So the total payroll, this is what's fascinating about baseball, and everybody's been saying it for years, and they still do nothing. So on our little graphic that we are posting for everybody, the top three teams, Los Angeles Dodgers, their payroll is over $270 million. New York Mets coming at second at $249 million for the payroll, and the New York Yankees are $236 million in payroll. Now the problem is there is no floor, so owners don't have to spend a minimum. Now there is a luxury tax if you go over a certain threshold, and the rich pay that. So the bottom three teams in the league, and this is weird because the old Cleveland Indians, who are now the Cleveland Guardians,
correct,
their entire payroll is $35 million.
I hate to laugh.
The Pittsburgh Pirates are $32.5 million, and the 30th, the lowest paid, are your Baltimore Orioles at $30 million for your entire roster, your entire payroll. Now, to put that in perspective, Max Scherzer's annual deal pays him $43.3 million. One player on the New York Mets makes more than the entire
team
of those last three teams. So how in the hell can you be competitive in a marketplace as such where you've got the deepest pocketed that get the most media rights because they don't have the same revenue sharing formulas that the NFL does, and the fact that there's no minimum threshold of what owners have to pay for these players is just, it's always been bizarre.
And there's
to
no
me.
salary cap except to where if you spend so much,
right,
you got to even pay more.
You pay a luxury
back to
tax.
The league. And it's funny because you're talking about the Orioles, and we used to work for Masson, and they paid us more than they're paying. They're paying the entire team. Go figure.
If only that were true. If only that were true.
Well, I mean, from our own experience, we can safely say that they're a bunch of cheapskates.
Yeah.
I mean, a serious cheapskate.
Well, I mean,
cheapskate bordering on criminal.
Well, that's just it. You got fan bases that are like, if you know going into the season that this is, and what happens is and it happens about every 6-7 years, somebody starts playing Moneyball, and they get all these young no-name guys, and they come together and they band together, and they make the playoffs, and occasionally they win a World Series, and Tampa's done it. And
Oakland's where that originated.
Yep, exactly.
And Moneyball is all about how many times you get on base. Is that the theory?
Well, it was the origination of
it's almost like
data.
an economic theory.
It's an economic theory, but controlled by data analytics.
Okay.
And it's taking all the raw data and it's saying, well, no, actually, don't go out and sign this guy for $43 million. Go get 10 guys at such and such. And it's manifested itself in being a cheaper way to approach the game. But
it's Hoosiers.
Yes.
Where the little guy David is going to beat Goliath, but not all.
And it's a great story when it happens, but
yes, exactly.
But unfortunately it happens once in a while, and it's funny. Everybody gives a golf, but the rich get richer every year. And so and what's fascinating is with the learners and seeing Max Scherzer pitch against them at Nats Park was truly bizarre. Juan Soto comes up and is facing Max Scherzer, and they are cracking up laughing at each other. The first time Soto comes up to bat, he's doing his thing, and he's eyeballing Scherzer, and Scherzer's, it was hysterical to see the two of them go
WWE.
Yeah.
See, even baseball's getting into it.
No
Vince
question.
McMahon's a genius, let's face it.
And so, no question about it, and they're still killing it. And I think once last year, what blew the fan base away here, everybody understood Max Scherzer because of his age. His contract was coming up, and he's towards the end of his career
He's a
for sure.
year type of guy, more or less.
And so in getting rid of him and sending him to L.A. and what he did out there, but once they got rid of Trey Turner and Coco's boyfriend, your daughter's boyfriend. Once they got rid of him, because everybody thought it was going to be Juan Soto and Trey Turner were the core guys that you build this franchise around, and then they let him go. And they said, so now it's all starting to add up because it came out 2 days ago that the Learners may be looking to sell the team. They've hired a big-time firm out of New York that specializes in professional franchises and in the selling of such assets. And they have been decimated, as you would expect. Their business is built on commercial real estate. In the pandemic, and everybody fleeing in these buildings and never going back to the way that it was. And they still are one of the richest. They were the richest owners in all of baseball, but that has since come down some. And so it's not as many billions, it's still billions, but they are fishing around to either A, sell the team, or B, bring in some investors.
Let me ask you this then. If that was the case, and they would have known it last year when they started unloading all our talent, right?
100%.
How does that make the team more attractive for a potential buyer?
Well, you're cleaning up. You don't have the big contracts on the books, right? So you want to polish this diamond up as best you can without say, hey, you can come in and do it however you want to do. You're not riddled with a bunch of bad contracts. You're not riddled, and clearly they are not riddled with a bunch of bad contracts.
Whoa, time out. I would beg to differ.
Okay, you're going the other side.
I'm going. if they got a bunch of losers on the team, those are bad contracts. So you get rid of all the winners, and you got losers.
But they're cheap losers. They're cheap losers. They're not expensive losers.
Okay, I guess so. Now you're thinking I buy the franchise, and I actually make it on concessions and parking.
Well,
I mean, is that where it's at?
asses in seats, which is what they
Right.
need. So all their industries got crushed by the pandemic. Baseball, nobody at the park. Commercial real estate, nobody at the office. So, and you know,
It's a business.
it 100%.
Always has
It's
been.
an entertainment business. You've always known that at a super young age.
Yep.
So we didn't it was stunning because sitting there watching the game with some friends and like going, man, it's bizarre. You don't know the bulk of these guys that are out there, and it's still a nice ballpark. It's a good time, and enjoy
Well, it's
that
almost
aspect.
like you almost feel like you're at a AAA game.
Almost.
In other words.
Almost.
And when you have if you go to a game over in Baltimore, well, how would you feel about that? You got a team in New York making what? They're paying $250 million or something like
Right.
that for their talent, and you're paying $30 million.
Right.
You'd have to feel, well, I'm at a minor league game.
Right.
I mean, invariably, because I mean, my understanding, not that I know a whole hell of a lot about the business world when it comes in the entertainment world, but it's clearly, and we're going to talk about something here in just a second that this all kind of bleeds into. It's all about branding.
Yeah.
If you got no brand, and that's where, branding is basically bullshit, is what it is, ultimately. There's some truthful branding, and then there's some what do you call it, apocryphal branding. That there's some people that are good for it, and some people have gotten to a place with a brand that you're going, how'd they get here? If you really looked at, do they have the chops to actually do this? Mm-hmm. And so this would be the case where that what you're saying, what does one go and watch something for? Ultimately, I would guess if you're a fan, you want to see the team win. That's the very top. But then you also go to see players do what they do, don't you?
Right.
You get for that moment of pleasure, that little frisson that you get when they hit a home run or a grand slam or whoever, the guy that's known to do this, and you go, whoa, I was at the park the other night and I watched, name whoever. I can't name you a big heavy hitter now.
Juan Soto doing it, Max Scherzer mowing him down. When you're seeing the best of the best.
Exactly. And that's when you feel there's some gratification there. But my guess is then where you have no brand, nobody's done anything, that you kind of go, well, then you go like you did. Well, I'll go watch the other guy who used to be here, who I know is an ace, and I'll watch him pitch. Not that I don't take you as a big national fan to begin with, but maybe you are. I have no idea. But you're more as the fan of baseball. You like
Exactly.
baseball. We learned that last week as a kid.
When my mind was
you almost
red.
started crying.
I was like, come on, man. How'd you guess that? Saw the tear in your eye, chump.
Well, baseball is not, I don't feel that way about baseball, only because of Franco, who threw probably a 90-mile fastball when he was 14 years old.
Older brother scarred you?
I think about that to this day, and I get pissed. I can't help it, I'm thinking.
It's funny because I asked him about it. He can't stop laughing.
Well, I expect that from Franco. But, yeah. So, I guess you have the haves and the have-not. Have-not, I mean, if you're this gets into, like, who was it? Was it Matt? No, yeah, that's his name. Stafford?
Matthew Stafford. Lions to the Rams.
Somebody, no, I know who it was. It was a kid from Washington, Seattle. Washington was here, football team, very interested
Russell Wilson,
very interested in signing him as a quarterback. He had no trade thing and said, not to you guys, though. I might be available, but not to you guys. So that's where you get into a situation. If you're going to be traded, trade probably, I'm sure Major League Baseball players have no trade contracts as well, which they can okay it, but they can also nix it if they don't want it to happen. But if you're getting traded to Baltimore, you're going, what in the hell am I doing here? Because a player, which I didn't realize, I did and I didn't. I always played on losers for the most part. Come in second best. Joe Chump, that's the story of my life. You got Jack Champ, Joe Chump. I played the part of Joe Chump. Almost one time in my life I got to be Jack Champ. Hey, it worked out.
It was a good run.
It was for the most part. But you get into a situation where, you want, if you're really ever going to make your brand bigger, You got to play on a place that's making its brand bigger. You got to play on a championship team. I mean, that's where all the recognition comes from. It does. I mean, you could be O.J. Simpson. You know, you come out of a brand. You know, you built your brand in college, and then you take it to the NFL, and you have some great years, a couple, 3 great years, and then all of a sudden you've made. But did he win anything? Not.
No, okay, but conversely, also along that notion, John, if you play in a major media market, your New York, your Boston, Chicago's, or LA's,
right?
You're amplified, right? You playing for the Jets
in
the microscope
and Washington,
and the microscope you were under as a rookie versus if you had gone to Buffalo or Kansas City, what might or might not have happened.
Yeah, well, the other thing too is, and you bring up a great point, I think. I remember Ed Williams telling me years ago, who was the majority, I think he was the majority owner, maybe not, but he was running the team. Edward Bennett Williams, the famous trial attorney.
Yeah, he owned
he
the
said
Orioles.
I think he said there's 5 towns, 5 cities: New York, Washington, Chicago, San Francisco, or L.A. Those were the 5 teams. Now, he left out Boston, Philadelphia. They're probably still grousing about it. But, hey, sorry, guys, you didn't make the cut. What can I tell you? Ed didn't.
Well, they were the 5 media markets that mattered.
Right. That's what he was saying.
And geographically, if you're in those 5, then it's a different ballgame.
And, you're talking about a famous trial attorney. He got it. He knew what entertainment was. He knew what that kind of publicity can do. And that's what gets down to all this is publicity, which publicity begets branding. Branding, however way you want to go with it.
So a ball player, again, you were fortunate that
I was.
Played in New York, right? Under the microscope of here comes the Kansas kid and the amplification that you got versus if you had been in Cleveland, if you had been in Buffalo,
or
you'd
stayed
have been
in
in
Kansas City.
Your brand.
And think about this, which at the time I never could appreciate it, and that's what forced me out, but I was playing on a team with Joe Namath.
Who sucks all the oxygen out of the room.
He did, but at the same time, all eyes are upon you.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, he put people in a lot. You're getting exposure,
Asses
even though
in the seats,
even though you're
eyeballs on the TV.
And I could never figure that out. I mean, that was just my own stupidity, because I believed in truth and beauty, which Dr. Ed told me it doesn't exist.
Only in your mind, son.
Dr. Ed is right.
Only in your mind.
Exactly. Well, for me, as Earl Bloom used to say, one of my best friends in high school, I had asked him how he's doing, and he'd say, "Well, I got myself fooled." That's priceless to me.
What a great line.
That's the story of my life. I've had myself fooled for years.
I got myself fooled. What a great line. I'm killing it.
It is. I mean, it stuck with me for 60, 70 years. Yeah, every time I'd ask him. But anyway, as it comes, when it comes down to this stuff with the branding and the teams, this is where the whole thing gets weird. This is where sports writers write what they write and, criticize what they criticize, and which, for the most part, and this is the other part of it is, and, you can't, like anything else, you have to have this group, but very, very, very few of the people that watch and not play really understand anything what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. It's sad, but it's true.
100%.
They may have played a little bit in high school, a little bit in college, but when you go to that last level, that last tier, the difference between, I found that out, and you find it out for yourself. You find out most of the time being on the field is what counts. Even the coaches on the sidelines that are coaching at this level don't really understand, and they should, unless they themselves was out there. Mr. Ditka would be the guy that would come to mind immediately, but there's a hell of a lot more guys than him.
Well, no question.
Ditka. But that's only because his name is Ditka.
Butkus.
Okay, 2 of the most perfect names to be a football player: Dick Butkus and Mike Ditka. You got to have K's in it, right? You got to have some K's or C's. The hard C is what sells.
Yeah, right there.
What was that? And somebody just told me that the other day. What was that middle linebacker and the last two-way player in the NFL? Who was he? Played for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was a center.
Oh, yeah.
Chuck Bednarik.
Chuck Bednarik. And Ray Nitschke, another hard Nitschke.
More hard C's.
Ray Nitschke.
Nitschke, another bad dude. But let me tell you something. I remember the first time I ever lied. It was almost like now here's a guy that goes under the radar, Big Doug, that I can't think of his last name now. Why can't I think of it? The defensive end for the Chicago Bears.
Oh, the freak that you always lamented that was one of the greatest athletes.
Like Butkus said about him, he's as close to Superman as you're ever going to get.
Doug
Atkins.
Doug Atkins.
Doug Atkins. Doug Atkins. I didn't
hard
think.
K.
But anyway, Benerick, I think I saw him one of the 2 times that I've been in Canton. And then I went back for my 10-year reunion. But I saw him there one time, and I'm going to tell you what, there are some guys that you know for a fact you're walking around, if this guy breaks bad, you don't want to be around. You want to just get the hell out of there. And he had that look on him. And I remember Sonny talking about when he was up there that he ran the grass drills. He himself was like, I'm the captain of the team. This is what we're doing. If you don't like it, we'll step over on the other side of the field.
Chuck, like to have a word with you?
You didn't want to have.
Well,
I'm thinking, now that you got me going here, I'm thinking to myself, if you could ever, remember how they always get those, people, polar bear and a grizzly bear, who wins? And it was like Butkus and a freight train, Butkus. But who would, seriously, between Doug Atkins and Chuck Benerick, who wins that one? I got to go with Doug just on size. But Benerick, Doug had attitude too. I was going to say.
Wasn't he a little loco?
Who, Doug?
Yeah.
It depends on what's loco.
Ted Hendricks, another one.
Hendricks.
Another one.
Although he doesn't count, and the reason he doesn't count is I literally knocked him on his back on a block once, and if I knock you down, you're out.
You're out of the club.
You're disqualified.
You are out of the club.
Immediately. You can't be in it.
Well, John, you remember this like 25 years ago with the old Bobby Mitchell Hall of Fame tournament out at Lansdowne.
Yeah, sure.
Bobby Mitchell, our guy. Man, we miss Bobby. Bobby Mitchell joined me and 40 of my fellow Hall of Famers as we tee off for the Help the Kids. Just the greatest guy, he and his wife Gwen, and that tournament was unbelievable.
Oh, he had brass from across all sports.
Oh my God. Bill Russell, Oscar Robertson, the guys that he had at this place. But the greatest thing was Friday night and Saturday night. But Friday night, the guys come in, and I got to drink with Chuck Bednarik one night.
He was there.
He was there.
So wait a second. Your first impressions when you laid eyes on Chuck?
Scary.
Yes, exactly.
Scary.
A mountain
and
of a man.
And shows his hands. And he's got 2 fingers that are like pointing over here and stuff, and he's talking to you like this.
So when he goes, and I want you, and the guy over here goes, yes, Chuck. Yes, Chuck.
I mean, and as the night goes on and everybody's getting a little more oiled up, and if anybody, you could just see that little twinkle that if somebody at his age and how he was still. Sam would get that way too, where he'd get that little gleam in his eye, and he knew you were crossing a line that he was still good
now.
for it.
You're on thin ice now.
He was still good for it.
By the way, I think Chuck is Czech.
That's right. Check knows check. Checkmate.
Check.
So he's a checkmate.
But my name's Riggins. Everything's soft about that name. There's nothing hard. When you think of Riggins, you think of rope. What is rope? It's very pliable. You can bend it around. I mean, come on. I never had a shot.
Listen, there's more defensive players. I saw a guy on a podcast.
Little guys.
I saw a guy, and this guy played D lineman, and I'm going to get the clip. And he did a podcast. He was a guest on LeVar Arrington's show like 6 months ago. And LeVar asked him, and he goes, "What's the greatest moment in your NFL career?" And he played D-line for the New England Patriots. And he goes, "I stopped John Riggins on the goal line, not once but twice, and it was the greatest moment of my NFL career."
What did I tell you? It's soft like rope. It's like, I don't want it that bad. I'm going to make your day right now.
All right, well, let's keep the money theme and the money train rolling on here. All right, John. You had sent this to me last week, and we ran out of time last week here. So this was from Christie's auction. And this is a previously unknown drawing by the Italian Renaissance sculptor and painter, a guy named Michelangelo.
Is it Michelangelo? I thought it was Leonardo.
Michelangelo.
Oh, it is Michelangelo.
Michelangelo. This was rediscovered at a Christie's auction in Paris. I won't bore you with the details. This drawing last sold in 1907 in Paris, and it disappeared, and now it reappeared. Isn't that fascinating about the world of art?
There you go.
And the number for this particular drawing, which is called A Nude Young Man Surrounded by Two Figures, depicts the shivering man and the baptism of the neophytes. One of the frescoes from Santa Maria del Carmine Church in Florence. So it went for $32.7 million.
Oh, it did sell.
32.7. Yep. And, well, I take that back. I don't have confirmation it's sold. That's what it was offered at.
Well, I was going to say that's what I think that they were hoping to get, or that was the projected sale
That
price.
was the projected sale.
Last week it was. It very well may have sold by now.
And more than likely, it probably went more than that asking price, just based on the value of how things are going.
You're right.
Collectibles. So you could either have Max Scherzer's...
Considerably more.
You could have Max Scherzer's contract for $43 million, or you could have Michelangelo over here for a little 32.
But what are you going to do if you pay Max Scherzer $42 million? What do? You say, Max, every 4 days you got to come out here and throw batting practice?
Got to do a little batting practice, had dinner with the kids, umpire some games for me.
Yeah, I wish somebody would have hired me to do that. I could have certainly left the gridiron behind. Yeah, to me, it's like, when I see stuff like that, I'm always fascinated. And I have to admit, I mean, I kind of, in a way, it's like I say, living off roadkill. I still sign autographs and I get paid for it, right? So it's the same thing, but I've always been amazed and don't understand truly the evolution of fame. Now, we have to assume that when there were Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals and the species that finally became Homo sapien, when did somebody start going, oh, that guy or that woman, whatever, but more likely it was that guy because women are still trying to make it in the same level, I want him to put an X on my stone axe because I want him to do something. I mean, when did it start and why?
That he just plundered and pillaged that village.
He did it. It was almost all by himself.
I need that guy in my life.
Right. I'm going to follow him because he knows his shit, basically.
Well,
how does that, you own that, all right, Michelangelo. It's a pyramid scheme. I mean, a John Riggins autograph is worth as much as that, in my mind, of course. I mean, because I'm a human being, he was a human being. We all breathed the same air unless he fucking got by on CO2 instead of oxygen. I have no idea. Then I'd go, well, now maybe he is a little different.
Well,
but you know what I'm trying. I didn't mean to cut
I
you
do.
off.
No, I do.
But you know where I'm going because I don't understand.
You can't relate to it at all.
Can you?
Yes, only in the sense of seeing fame, being around you, being around other athletes, being around other celebrities in the business I've been in for 35 years, and seeing, because at the end of the day, what you can't appreciate is the impact that you had on people and a moment and a memory in time that for some it's their most cherished moment in memory. Yeah. John, people are being buried in your jersey. So the power of that and that association, that it goes, through families and generations, and that I know you can't really relate to that because you were one of these special stars.
Well, yes and no. It's like when you finally get to a certain level of fame, dare I say, and I think I don't want to be overly humble here or anything because I'm not. You know me well enough. No, I'm not. But that I understand that I got to a certain level on the hierarchy here. Like I might be in the middle of what you call, not even the middle, whatever. Because there's people that are really, really Beatles, for example, right? Worldwide, everybody knows who the Beatles are. Or of course I'm worldwide, but
Mr. Worldwide.
It's Beatles and John Riggins. That's the way I see it.
Like again, Juan Riggins down in Central America.
Exactly.
The guy.
I've got a different name in all the different countries. I mean, I got some names in Africa. I don't even know how to pronounce.
You got one name. You're like Madonna, Prince.
Right, Riggo. What more can you say? But what I was going to say is when I was a kid, Mickey Mantle, and then... So I do get this, but over the years, once you understand it, I go, because I know who I am, and I know of all my foibles, and I know that, I did have a moment there that a lot of people have bequeathed to me or have bestowed upon me as that special moment in their life, which I know down deep, I don't really deserve it. I'm going to take it. Don't get me wrong. But I don't deserve it, and I appreciate it. But when I first, never forget this, there was a banquet, and you've heard me talk about this. Howard Cosell was the MC. There was a banquet at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City, a business deal. Joe Frazier was there, just to name it, like the heavyweight champion of the world. And everybody was sitting at a different table. And I was invited. Emerson Boozer was there. And I'm trying to think of who else was there. Bob Tucker, who was a tight end for the New York Giants. And anyway, I remember being there, and Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford, I believe, was there. And we walk in, and I just happened to get there at the same time as Mickey Mantle. And we walked in there together, and I was, I didn't know what to say to the guy. And here I was.
How big a guy was he?
He was pretty, we got to figure, get a little, he wasn't probably quite as tall as I was. Maybe he's about 6 foot, maybe, but a stocky kind of guy. Yeah, exactly. He looked like he was good for it, and to this day, I'll never forget that. So at that time, I was still, groping around. And let's face it, that Super Bowl in '17. That basically put me on a map, one play. I mean, I tell that to people today. I get Joe Namath. Once a Super Bowl guaranteed victory put Joe on the map.
Yeah, right. It's this with the finger and Joe going out. But John, while it was the one play that is the most famous play in Washington Redskins franchise history and has been voted many times, okay, but that entire playoff run, that magical season, what you guys bottled up over the course of a number of seasons, that the likes said again, that 10-year stretch, if going back 40 years in time and that run through the playoffs and culminating in the Super Bowl run, John, you were Tom Brady. I mean, with today's social media and the commercial opportunities, and look what you had.
You just pissed me off.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying.
Ever compare me.
I'm just saying at that level of notoriety, attention, and because I know how it was back then when they were doing, breaking in news reports because you were at Sibley Hospital allegedly in traction.
The good old days. You're right. What had you created on it? It was almost like you cast a spell upon the city in a weird sort of way.
100% that then took over the country for the appreciation and I think the fact that it was blood and guts running football that people could relate to.
Must have been.
You guys and the Hogs and the well-rounded team and the guys that you had, that was magical.
Well, and I have to agree with that. Now, just for the record, yeah, I bottled a little bit, but Grimy and Bosco and Donnie and Joe, they bottled a whole lot. They actually opened a warehouse. Me, I had a little mom and pop store. I didn't bottle that much.
Every band needs a front guy, right?
Yeah, that must be. No, those were definitely the good ones. And all of a sudden, I appreciate your saying that because it kind of puts everything in perspective to a certain extent and helps me along the way because when you see, I mean, to me, first of all, you don't even know it's a piece of paper with some drawing on it. The authentication and all this stuff is one of the Koch brothers discovered when he bought these expensive wines.
Oh yeah, and they got ripped off.
They were fun, but then of course they ripped off the wrong guy. You don't rip off wealthy people, really wealthy people.
You piss them off. Huh? They got the resources.
Yeah,
never again.
He tracked them
So
down.
A little plug for Cameo. We're less about the audio. We're more about cameos now in video greetings. So hit John up on Cameo.
There you go. Exactly. And if you need a plumber, get a hold of O'Connor.
O'Connor Plumbing.
They'll help you out. And you know what? Ha! That's right, folks. Riggo